And we're live. Phil Tarrant, Tom Panos, Real Estate Exposed, broadcast simultaneously on the REB podcast network, Smart Property Investment, to all our friends on the social media. Tom, how you going? You well?
I'm well. As I said to you off air, I've just come off having the second booster, which that actually becomes the fourth jab, and been unwell for a couple of days. Obviously, I think the way that vaccinations work is that they must have some of the virus in there. That's what their effectiveness is. So I did have some of the side effects of COVID, but we're back. I'm just curious, in your workforce, is there many people at the moment off with COVID?
I wouldn't know if they were off with COVID. I would be able to work out whether or not people were off on sick leave, but I don't know. So therefore, I would say there's not a lot. If there was a lot, I'd know about it. So it's not really a concern or an issue. But they're saying, it's still, they're talking about this mini pandemic of just illness at the moment. The influenza is getting around, which sort of sometimes people think is COVID, but a lot of people are taken out by that and with that. I think after 2 years locked up, our immune systems aren't as strong as what they used to be, Tom. So people are coming down with it, but nothing within this organisation. But you see a lot of companies struggling, and particularly those which are very front line, like airlines, airports. They're all struggling. Either coffee shops are, and retail and hospitality are struggling. All the hotels are struggling still. For some of our events, they're actually capping. Like, for example, say you could fit 900 people into a ballroom. They're saying the maximum you can have is 600 because we can't get the staff to come and serve the drinks and serve the food. So it is impacting still. I don't know what's happening in real estate. You getting calls from people going, it's dire at the moment?
Am I getting calls from people saying what, Phil?
It's dire, the sort of COVID ripping through their offices.
There's a few. I mean, right now that I'm in Byron Bay, and I know one of the owners of one of the big businesses has contacted me. He was going to show me a property, and has contacted me to tell me he tested positive today. There's still there was 45,000 cases in Australia yesterday, and don't forget that I think most people that get a antigen test with COVID unreported, and then you've got those that have got COVID who aren't getting antigen tests that are in the community, so they're not included. So you turn around and say 45,000. I was very alarmed to actually find out in Australia there have been 10,000 deaths of COVID, and what surprised me, Phil, was 6,000 of the 10,000 have occurred in the last 6 months. So 4,000 occurred in the first 2 years, and then 6,000 have occurred in the last 6 months. And what's happened is it's because we decided we're going to learn to live with it. And of course we had to open up, and it just fast tracked what probably would have happened afterwards, and Paul Biller's put his thumbs up because I was coughing. He's in Byron Bay as well. I was coughing, and he's a very successful real estate agent in Double Bay. I was coughing and sneezing yesterday, and we were together at a cafe, and he then got his wife to send me a text message 2 times to ask me whether I'd had a test since then. So,
speaking of in coffee shops, Tom, I saw you on the social media shadow boxing somewhere in a cafe. Is that right? Did I see that correctly?
Yes. Yes. So that happened at the Bay Run Cafe. It was bucketing down raining, and I couldn't do the Bay Run, so I went in undercover at the cafe, and I said to Paulie that owns the cafe, Newell Park Cafe, I said, Paulie, you don't mind if I do a little bit of push-ups while this rain starts to chill down a little bit? And he said, yeah. And then I did some shadow boxing, and he pulled out the phone and he took the shadow boxing. That was it. And by the way, if you go and look at that post, it's been taken down because I jokingly said the owners asked me to leave because of my shadow boxing. And he rang me up and he said, Tom, I'm getting everyone saying you're a bad sport. All the guy was doing was some shadow boxing. So if you actually go online, you can't actually find the post. it backfired on him. I got to tell you, Phil, and I know that we talk about lots of different subjects here. I'm really, really keeping my eye out on the movement of social media activity going from Facebook, Instagram, which is the one company, to TikTok. And it's happening really, really quickly, really, really quickly. So for a couple of years, it's been a Facebook, Instagram, social media world, quite a number of years. And then all of a sudden, I've just seen in the last month or two, and the data is very clear, that the traffic is moving towards TikTok, and that Instagram and Google, who owns YouTube, have made defensive plays by bringing in the equivalent products that TikTok has got, which is essentially short form vertical video, right? And what they've done is Instagram uses Reels, YouTube uses Shorts, but I have to say to you, Phil, the person that's working the algorithm at TikTok and the engineers they've got there are pretty good. They're pretty good. There was always this theory about, it's a Chinese product. They're taking our data, and that was a concern for a lot of people. But that's out of the bag now. What do you do?
Well, the thing is that I find it sometimes quite fatiguing, right? And no doubt a lot of real estate agents, you would find it, because a lot of your business is based on social connectivity. But, okay, here's another thing that I need to look after. Here's another thing I need to build. Here's another audience I've got to grow. I've got to service it. It's no use having social media if you're not posting anything on it. So if you've got Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, you can't do everything really well. You've got to really choose what works for you and what's best for your business. So it's just another thing for real estate agents and mortgage brokers to be across, right? Headache.
100%.
Yeah, it's tough. You made a good point, Tom. It sort of just got me thinking. And for those of you who have been tuning into this for a while, myself and Tom have navigated the COVID environment initially via what's making headlines. We've got people out of Texas tuning in as well. What's making headlines, which is series 1 of this, and then series 2 was a Real Estate Exposed, where me and Tom just talk about stuff around real estate. Before we jump on air every time, me and Tom normally just debrief what's been going on for the week and chat about what we're up to. And from that, we typically find really good topics to talk about. And one of them I want to touch on today, Tom, a little bit later on. But you mentioned, it just got me thinking, you mentioned that the number of COVID deaths post the restrictions of lockdown is essentially as large as what it was during lockdown. But there's 45,000 cases reported today, I think you mentioned. I don't even know that. I can't remember the last time I even checked in on what the numbers were of COVID. So everyone's just absorbed this idea of this is the environment they operate within. So nothing really hits the headlines anymore around COVID. People just are getting on with life, knowing that we're living with it. And maybe just think about the most recent rate announcement on Tuesday, Tom, 50 basis points. If you think back to May, when the first interest rate hike went up 25 basis points, and then in June it was 50, which was like Armageddon, the world is falling in. Now we just got another 50 basis point official increase to the official cash rate. Didn't really even hit the radar. No one spoke to me about it. Me personally, I didn't even clock that it was Tuesday and there was going to be a rate announcement until later on in the day when I jumped on my email. It wasn't even on my radar, even though I operate and work inside a property. Why hasn't this 50 basis point registered, Tom? Is it just because everyone is just comfortable with the fact that interest rates are going up and they're just getting on with it?
I'm like you. You weren't aware that they were even meeting. You said to me you'd forgot that was the day. I found out by searching for it the next day. Though having said that, I know that your business is on the case and you got your journalists that are, providing information. You would have been providing it on Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, 3:30. You would have sent an email out, because I know that that's what you do. I think what it is, Phil, is people have got it factored in. I think people have factored in that we know what's going to happen, so we're not going to go out looking for it. It's only you only go looking for information. I woke up this morning looking to find out whether Kyrgios had won or not, because that game was played in the middle of the night here in Sydney, and I didn't have that information. But because for the last 6 weeks we have had the media telling us that rates are going up, and they're going to go up every month, and they're going to keep going up, and we're going to have 0.5% increases, people had already factored it in. People have got that factored in. Like someone said to me this morning, should I auction my property on the 30th of July because the next Reserve Bank meeting is on August the 2nd, and we can actually auction before the rate rise? I said, it's irrelevant. It's already factored in. Whoever's buying real estate understands we're in a upward rate environment, right? So they're not sitting there day by day. What are they doing? I think that's the main reason, Phil, that it has not been a big headline in the last few days.
Yeah. And if you're seeing it playing out in terms of property sales, like, ground truth, you get a measurement, you get a sort of pulse check every Saturday when you rock up doing 10, 12 auctions. Is it just factored in? Hence the reason why real estate is a good industry, because irrespective of rate cycles, people are still transacting real estate. It just changes how it happens. What are you seeing? Is it slowing things down? Are prices coming down? What's the future look like?
Look, this is probably the first time I'm saying this in this current period. I actually think that we're now seeing in many areas, and the areas that I work, an absolute slowdown on price deceleration. So I think that we're not seeing that. I think it's slowed down. I think whatever's happened has happened. And now I think we're seeing some sort of stability and acceptance from the people, the stakeholders, the buyers and sellers, that this is the new market. So what I'm seeing, I suppose, is prices in the last 6 weeks haven't been going down as they did in the previous 6 weeks. I think that's what I've seen. So this week I did 2 out of 9. By Wednesday, which is yesterday, that number had got to 7 out of 9. So one thing that's really clear, Phil, is that the amount of properties that were selling at auction has now shifted to selling after auction. So I actually think if we change the clearance rate to being on the 7th day after the auction, I think you'll find there's no clearance rate change. It's exactly what the same.
And is auctions now, because of this cycle, a tactic as part of a sales process where you will take something to auction just to actually get a price point or interested parties that you can negotiate with afterwards? Is that a smart way to go about doing it?
I think if you're a vendor and if you're an agent, it's a very smart and a very effective way for the following reasons. Number one is it basically says to the whole market, by this date, which is the auction day, I'm making a decision, right? I'm not coming to the market to win the lottery and sit there for 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 months. I'm actually making a decision 30 days from today. That's first plus. The second plus, if you're a vendor and if you're an agent, is at the moment, there is what we call the emergence of Bob the Butcher, who doubles up as a real estate expert. So when you sell a property as a private for sale, let's assume, Phil, that you come and buy a property through me. I'm an agent. We agree on a price of $800,000. Before you actually put the 10% deposit down, you normally go off and do you speak to your lawyer, you're doing your pest and your building inspection. So there's a period normally of about 5 to 7 days where you're out there making sure everything's right before you become unconditional. Well, it's during this unconditional period that it's become extremely risky for the real estate industry, because what happens is all the friends and family members start giving advice to the buyer and saying, oh, haven't you heard what's going on? Property prices are dropping. We're hitting recession, rates are going to hit 6%. So they scare the buyer. And what happens is the sale falls through, and then the real estate agent goes through the same process another time. So often they'll have to sell a property 3 times, Bill, before they get paid. So with auction, that doesn't happen. When the hammer drops, it's done. It's dusted. There is no chance of that property falling through. So
And if you don't succeed at auction, at least you've got, you would hope, interested parties that you can negotiate with subsequent to it.
Yeah, well, the research is clear. Whether you look at RP data or the Real Estate Institute's data, it's very clear. It's about half. Properties that go by auction sell in half the days on market than private treaties. And that's because a lot of the properties identify a buyer during the auction, and even if they don't sell at auction, they're selling shortly after auction. The buyer is identified because you've got this 4-week compressed period. Best way to describe it is, instead of doing a three-year university degree, you're doing a 4-week high-intense program at Harvard University where you're all in, working all hours because you know by this day you want to get your graduation. That is what an auction is.
There you go. So it lends itself to our chat last week about the death of auctions. I think you're again affirming that auctions are alive and well, and a smart strategy, smart tactical solution to getting property moved, particularly in these tough markets. Jim Stats there. What did he say, Tom?
Well, prices will never go down. I don't agree with that, Jim. I mean, they've already gone down. They will flatten out. Yes, that's what I think's happened now. And then they will take off once lettuce leaves at $2 again. I'm not quite sure what lettuce leaves are. Have lettuce leaves come down, or are they still crazy prices?
Oh, they're still up there. But, you know, the reason why lettuce, and it's an important point, we're chatting about some of the challenges that organizations are facing right now. The reason why we're in this inflationary environment, why stuff's more expensive, at least in Australia, is that, you know, it's not that, well, lettuce growing has been impacted, but we can't get the lettuces out of the ground and into the shops because we don't have the people to do it. And this is the challenge that the government has right now is getting people into Australia to do the work that needs to get done in order for us to maintain these supply chains. It's the reason why lettuce generally is so expensive, because there's not enough of them. Because they're rotting on the ground. You know, you see it's horrific where, you know, full orchards of trees, oranges just falling on the ground and rotting because they can't find people to pick them, you know, and this is the challenge we have. It's get used to it, you know, and you see it also in real estate, you know, it's the war for talent is tight. But I think they're working on it, so I'm told.
Have you so Phil, I want to ask you, have you been flying a reasonable amount of time over the last month or two?
Yeah, I flew a lot over April, May, and June. I've pretty much gone to every capital in a space between sort of April, May, June. I've been every capital city in Australia except for Tasmania. So I covered this great brown land on a plane.
What percentage of your flights have run on time?
Pretty much all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd sort of, but you know, I choose to fly Qantas, and I find that they're the least disrupted when it comes to like your flights being delayed a bit. You sort of fly the cheaper stuff like Jetstar. You're always delayed, right? You know, you get pushed.
Well, the research is 40% of since we've started flying again post COVID-19, 40% of flights are being delayed. Maybe they're not the Qantas ones. And the article that I was reading in the Fin Review said it's got nothing to do with weather, but it's got everything to do with staff shortages that are caused by either COVID workers being off or whether they just can't get staff.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was at a function last night with the guys and girls over at Air New Zealand. I was actually having Air New Zealand now is just really kicking off flights again to Australia. I think 75% of all of their international traffic now is essentially out of Australia. So Australia is tourism. Had a chat with the CEO. The New Zealand Prime Minister was there.
Jesus, mate, guys and girls, do you understand who we've got here online? Imagine.
Mate, I'm just a bloke. I'm just a bloke sitting in the background, mate. But yeah, they're super bullish around tourism into New Zealand, and the CEO has a really good. So you know the CEO of Air New Zealand started his job on the day when they first cancelled flights from China to New Zealand. It was his first day. First day on the job, and he sort of gave a really good
Wow.
story on, don't worry, that everyone was telling, don't worry, it's okay, it'd be short term, and then they blocked Japan and then Korea and all those places. It's like, don't worry, it's all okay. And then it went no flights, and it was like, okay, now we've got a bit of a problem, right? But yeah, they had the Jacinda Ardern out there flying the flag for Air New Zealand, mate. She's good.
Where was this? Where was this function at?
Just in town at the Air New Zealand offices in the city, and she was quite cheeky because they've launched this new Skybed thing where you can go and have a sleep in the back of the plane for economy passengers. But she stood up and she went as a proud shareholder of Air New Zealand, and obviously she's the chief ambassador for the national airline of New Zealand as the PM. She spoke really well. Quite good fun.
So how would that work? So in economy, you can actually go in if you're flying and you want to go to sleep. If you're having a long flight, you can book the bed.
You can book the bed. It's like, imagine bunk beds in the back of the plane.
Yes.
And I think you book it for a particular period of time. I can't remember how long it is. But you can lie flat and get a kip, then head back to your seats, I believe. So, yeah.
Could you? Are you allowed to get 9 hours on it?
Mate, I don't know. I think it might be capped at 4, but
right.
Guys like you, Tom, you don't have to worry about that. You always fly flat out the front of the plane.
Oh no, not necessarily. Melbourne, Brisbane, I fly economy. Adelaide, it's a 50-50. Perth, it's business. Overseas, it's business. Business airfares, I've got to tell you, are through the roof.
Yeah.
Are through the roof at the moment. I can't get over it. Like, we're talking Sydney to Europe. Business class now is $15,000 to $20,000. Now that used to be $8,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, that's crazy. It is absolutely crazy, and expect it to be more. There's less planes in the air because, again, of staffing shortages, and it's obviously a real estate exposed. It's not really about aviation, but they're facing it. You saw the queues at the start of the holidays. This weather impact that we've had right now, this big East Coast low, which has been hammering New South Wales. All those people trying to get out of town. Interstate and globally at the start of school holidays, it's tough, and it's all largely worker related. They can't find the right people to do the work, and it's impacting everything. That's the supply chain constraints. And how does that all wrap up into real estate and the economy? It's just it's just the way it is. Back to the point of 50 basis points didn't really measure on people's psyche. They're just going, okay, no worries. But that doesn't dissipate the challenging environment that all Australians are finding themselves in. You scored the Reserve Bank pretty bad, Tom, a month or so ago when they started ratcheting up rates, saying, they've told Australians that rates aren't going up to 2024, but now they're stuck in there and they're at it. They're going to keep pushing till they see people put the brakes on. And where that ends up, who knows? But do yourself a favour, go and look at interest rate, official cash rate over the last 30 years. It's still pretty low. It's still pretty low.
Well, look, there was auctions being held, commercial auctions, and I'm keeping my eye out on the commercial auctions, Phil. And surprises me today in the Fin Review, a KFC, which off the top of my head was on the south coast of Sydney. I think, don't quote me, I think it was around Bomaderry, right? Sold at a yield at nearly 2.5%. which is unheard of. It is the lowest price yield. Michael Collins, who was the agent, said that they've done all the research possible and they can't find any evidence that there's ever been a yield lower than this. And the irony is that it's happening during a period of raising interest rates, which we clearly know commercial's impacted because it's very much a yield interest-based market. And his explanation was that if a property is under $5 million, rates aren't affecting that marketplace because in the commercial marketplace, there are a lot of cash buyers who are simply just chasing a strong, solid, long-term yield with a quality tenant in there. And that's why this KFC ended up selling at this price. So I think, Phil, that there is a lot of people that have still got money around, and that's why we're seeing these blips and out-of-line sales that are happening when the market's even going down. Even in the street that I'm in right now here in Byron, a property is sold up the road. I think it's exchanging contracts today for $5.7 million. This is simply a block of land, one block of land that you can put one house on there, right? And I'm still seeing, Phil, with everything that we're doing, I'm still seeing results that still surprise me, even though we've got this changing marketplace. Central Coast has been during, and I know you got interest on the Central Coast. A property just got sold for over $10 million. So we could be falling
Central Coast
into
going absolute nuts. It's underwater at the moment, by the way. But
Central Coast is as well. I thought it's Newcastle. It's Central Coast as well.
Central Coast has been absolutely hammered. A lot of water comes in into the Tuggerah catchment there, and that's sort of, it's pretty bad floods out that way. But Central Coast is booming. These are my baseline philosophy is that these sort of quasi-regional rural areas within striking distance of capital city markets, i.e. you can commute in less than an hour and a half, they'll still be strong performers in this market. I don't know, what are you seeing, the diaspora, the Sydney and Melbourne diaspora that live up in or have holiday homes or second residence up in Byron Bay? Any major concerns? Because they reckon it's those markets which will feel the impact first when the changing way where we work and people getting back into the office start to sort of be mandated by or executives are expected to be in the office. Have you seen much change? Is it what are your sort of mates up that way saying? They're going, no, we're happy up here, we're not going to change. I think
there's definitely elements of that happening. I think with Byron, I think the people that did move to Byron during the lockdown were probably not a middle manager that is being told to come back on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I think most of the people were people that probably could have made the move before, but that was just the tipping point. And they're generally, I notice most of them seem to be people that are centered around technology, right? And you can see it. They just look like tech nerds when you see them in cafes, right? With laptops and multiple sorts of plugged-in devices into their things, and you sometimes overhear the conversations, and you don't understand a single word they're talking about because they're using some code language, right? But there are other parts, of Australia where. And Phil, having said that, I've got to tell you, I'm in this situation today where two of my family members need to be back in Sydney tomorrow, and two of the other family members have decided, they've looked at the calendar and they says the weather's great. Now we want to stay here, and it's not straightforward when it's not driving distances, right? So that's something that you've got to be mindful. But to answer your question more specifically about the sea changes, the tree changes that made the move during lockdown, believing that we were going to be a permanent Zoom worker and that the office had gone and that you would always be working through your home. And now that's changed. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of tension there. I talked to a couple of the senior executives at a few companies that I've been employed with. It is not a straightforward direction to get people to say you're back at work Monday to Friday, and that's the end of it. It's not as straightforward, there's a lot of tension in that change management piece. But there is a lot of people that made the change thinking they were going to be working Monday to Friday. They go to a new community, and it hasn't worked out as what they thought. All of a sudden, they've got their employer saying, you've got to be here 3 out of 5 days. You may have kids that are missing their school friends. You may have people that are missing their parents and their family structure. And I think that those areas that boomed are at risk, It's
whether or not people can weather. If they're cash buyers, it doesn't matter. It depends whether they've got big mortgages out on this and they're able to sort of weather probably another percent increase in the official cash rate, and therefore that'll translate into higher mortgages if the lender passes it on. But I'm already sort of hearing, Tom, that rates will keep going up to about 2023, and this sort of is coming out of the States. But then the cycle will be to start bringing it down again. So this could be a short, sharp moment in time with interest rates. It's still to play out. It's way above my pay grade, but I'm just reporting on and what I'm hearing in other parts. So I don't know. I don't know what your views are. Is this going to be a structural long-term impact for interest rates to get to a point where they'll just stabilise and keep as they are?
I'm getting a strong view from a lot of people that work in financial services that rates are going to peak at some time in 2023, and then that we are going to see what they were used for achieved, and then that we may be seeing a return of lowering of interest rates after that, and feel that there are going to be some benefits out of that. Example, a lot of people that want to do renovations and building at the moment, you're just right out of the game with the demand. I mean, everything, if you really look at everything that's going on, it's demand and supply is the underlying cause of everything, whether it's, costs of lettuce, staff, flights being delayed. It's the demand and supply issue, right? Hopefully, Phil, that it's another 12 months. But I've got to tell you, everyone that's watching this, in my 35 years of real estate, if rates kept going up every month this year and the first 6 months of next year, let's assume that were to happen, we've still got rates that are extremely competitive to the rates that I've been used to when I average it out over the 35 years I've been in real estate. Because we've just started at basically a zero base fill for the last 2 years. That's the issue. There has been no interest rate. It's basically been free money.
Yeah, you're right. And that's put in perspective or context. And again, it'll just become normalized. If we get back to the point where everyone's interest rates starting with a 4 or a 5, that's sort of long-term averages. I think people just have to absorb it. And it's those who aren't able to because of whatever their circumstances are, or they can't afford the mortgage that they had, or they haven't done their homework or priced it in properly or done their budgeting right, you'll see distress there. But, for a lot of property investors, that's when that's good buying.
Absolutely.
Tough,
now,
mate.
Phil, I've got to get on to another meeting. I've just realised it's in my diary, and it was supposed to be face-to-face, but it's not going to happen. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to keep you informed on this Saturday is going to be very interesting. Again, we've had another interest rate rise. I want to see whether the percentage is higher this week than last week after we've had a rate rise.
Let's find out. It'll be a good measurement. Has anyone cancelled auctions for Saturday because of this last rate rise, Tom?
I won't know that till really Friday, because a lot of people just keep waiting till the last day to see whether they get a buyer. But I can tell you the average cancellation rate over the last 2 months for me has been 35%. The average in the marketplace in New South Wales has been 35%. So roughly about a third of the properties are being cancelled. And why they're being cancelled, most likely there's no buyer.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. Well, there you hear it. Tom Panos, real estate gym, auctioneer, property coach, chief coach for real estate business, REB. Thanks for your strong participation, Tom.
Thank you so much, Phil, and I'll see you next week. Viewers and listeners, subscribers, thank you so much.